Welcome to the Glorious Beard Podcast. This week, or I should say this show, my guest is Joshua Coburn, who, if you've not seen him on Instagram, you should really look him up and follow him. He is a purveyor of positivity amongst a whole lot of other things, and he does, of course, have a glorious beard. He joins us today from the beautiful area in Nicaragua, where he lives. And we're going to talk to him today. Joshua, thanks for being here on The Glorious Beard.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
So we were talking before the show, and you were telling me that you grew up in a small manufacturing town in Iowa, of all places. And I think that you and I relatively have kind of the same, likewise, parallel background as far as the ethics of working and when you start and how you're supposed to be and that kind of thing. You started working pretty young. You had some really interesting jobs. Maybe you can tell me what it was like not being old enough to choose.
Yeah. So I did. I grew up in a small town called Brooklyn, Iowa, which was mostly agricultural, lots of farmers, stuff like that. And I certainly did not fit in. I was always kind of like the weird kid, back then, which is fine. But yeah, early on, I started working very young. It was just kind of the nature of the family, so to speak. And my first actual, where I got paid with a check, not just mowing lawns and stuff like that, was working in a restaurant to wash dishes and handle the prep cooking for Rocky Mountain oysters. And for those who are not aware of what Rocky Mountain oysters are, those are testicles. So I would work testicle night at this restaurant. I would prep cook all that stuff. So it was an interesting start to what would be an interesting career, to say the least, in general. But after that, I worked in the local grocery store, which was wonderful, and everybody there was awesome. But again, I was that kid around town that always seemed to be like, oh, he's super nice and responsible, but gosh, he's weird. He's the weird one. Because, I had tattoos young. My whole lower left leg was tattooed at that time even. So, I was still in high school. Nobody did that, or their parents would never allow that, and again, we're talking early mid-90s, and not every Tom, Dick, and Harry on every basketball and football team had tattoos at the time either. So, it was a pretty interesting time, to say the least.
I got my first tattoo around the same time you did, and my mom had come and pulled me out of school. I was asleep in remedial development class, if that tells you anything. I was a punk, and they say, oh, your mom's in the principal's office. And I go, and she's like, we have to leave. Something's happened. And I'm like, oh my gosh, And she gets out to the car and she goes, are you ready for your first tattoo? That's the type of thing she would do. And I'm like, no. And she goes, well, I've already paid for it in the Times book, so here we go. And so I get my first tattoo. I'm 17. And she goes, you got to make me a promise. I said, okay. She goes, don't ever get them below your sleeve, and don't get them where you can't get a real job. And
Right.
She eventually passed away. So now I have them everywhere. So I get it. I was that kid too. I was the first one in my school to have a tattoo, and everybody's like, oh my gosh.
Right.
So you're that kid.
Yep.
You could say you were rebellious. You could say you were on your own terms.
Certainly.
How was that for you in high school? I mean, were you still known as the weird kid? Were you popular? What was going on there?
I got along with everybody. I was good at sports, but I quit doing sports so I could work because, I had to pay for my own stuff. So it's that's the way it is. So working made more sense to me than playing games, so to speak. So that's what I did. But I got along with everybody. I had friends in every sort of friend group, but I never went out and hung out or anything. Not often. And I was just busy. I worked. I'd get up in the morning and go in and load truck once a week from 5 to, I don't know what it was, 6:30, and then I'd go into school, and then after school I'd go back to work until 8 or 9 p.m. Almost every day. I think I did one day off a week. So like, it was crazy. And it was that way all through school. And then when I got out of school, I immediately knew that there was no way in hell that I was going to any sort of further education, because that I couldn't make compute for me. It made more sense, not necessarily just from kind of this isn't what I want to do. I don't want to do more school. It's like, do I want to start my life with large amounts of debt, or do I want to work and accrue earnings over time? And, I started doing the math, and I'm like, okay, so if I did X and get out of college and have this debt, but I start the workforce at, X salary, I could already have accrued money and time and experience and be in the workforce with that amount of salary in those amount of years anyway. Is kind of was my logic. Not that it was sound by any means, but I knew I didn't want debt, and that's still how I operate. And so I didn't do that. But what I did do is started working in manufacturing, and also started working in body modification, started training in all that, and kind of got into that world. So the whole thing with like tattoos and stuff wasn't kind of a passing fad. It was this beard podcast kind of goes with the beard too. It falls into place. Like for me, it was always historical. It was always rooted in like National Geographic things that I saw, thumbing through those on my grandparents' living room floor. So it just had a bigger meaning and more important than just, oh man, I'm going to be so cool, like a badass, So there was some just general deeper thought associated with all that. So that's the direction I kind of started heading in.
Well, as you were growing up, did you have any kind of sense of what you wanted to do with your life? Because a lot of kids, when they're really young, they're like, oh, I want to be a fireman, or I want to be a police officer, or I want to do this, I want to do that. What was that for you?
I do everything that I said I would do. It's so crazy. I grew up thinking I want to write. I don't know what that meant. I don't know if it meant music or books or what. I knew that I would be on stage somehow. And again, I don't know if that was books or speaking or something else. And I knew I wanted to go into the kind of body modification tattoo world, which over the years I've done all those things. I own a publishing company, put out several books over the years, and I did speaking tours for years and years before I moved down here, and kind of took a break from the world. And the body modification thing just kind of happened at the right time, because I met the tattoo artist that owned the studio at the time when I was 15. And I just stop in regularly, and then I'd, you naturally start doing, hey, can you run and grab me some food? Hey, can you go get paper towels? Hey, you want to learn how to make needles? Hey, would you like to learn how to do some of this? And here we are. So I did that for 10 years and did all kinds of cool stuff, from suspension and, belly button piercing, eyebrow stuff, that kind of thing, all the way to implants and suspensions and scarification and stuff like that, which is super cool to be able to be a part of the ritual that is those things from ancient stuff. That's super cool to have been a part of. So that's been awesome.
Let's get into suspension for a minute. I know what it is.
Sure.
You don't have to explain it to me. But for the listener who doesn't, explain it to them, but then after they get over the initial shock, tell them what it really is like. What's the benefit? What would be the reason a person would do it?
Sure. Well, it's suspension is the brass tacks of it is it's putting hooks through your tissue. Could be your chest, could be your back, or virtually anywhere else, your knees, your elbows, and being just that, suspended by those hooks through your skin and floating freely in space, basically. It's rooted in the Oki-Pa, which was a Native American ritual. It's a kind of a coming of age ritual, and essentially at that time, what happens today versus what that was, are two different things for pretty deep reasons. But essentially, a lot of people do it to kind of reclaim themselves or to usher in a new part of their life or experience freedom, because it takes a lot to let your toes leave the ground when you're not in control, and there's obviously some pain involved, but you have to transcend all of that stuff. And that transcendental experience is what people are going for. And that's why people do it. That's historically the reasons as well. But again, if anybody wants to read about it, or maybe have even read, I think it's called A Man Called Horse, is a book from years ago, has some descriptions of that as well. So worth checking out, because it's super cool. And I love like all that stuff today. Like, I live in a country where shamanism and El Brujos and Brujas are still a thing here, doing smoke baths and peyote rituals, and all the ayahuasca and all this kind of stuff. So all of that traces back to those things as well. It's about finding your higher self and all that. So
thank you for enjoying The Glorious Beard. The Glorious Beard is sponsored by Men Matter & Co. Confidence is a rare commodity these days in men. And at Men Matter & Co., they believe that confidence and self-respect are key to understanding what it is to be a man. They want to help you to have more confidence by helping you grow a full and healthy beard. Because at Men Matter & Co., products like their beard oils and balms don't only make your beard glow, they'll give you the confidence and swagger you need as a man to have self-respect. And right now, you can go to menmatterandco.com and use the promo code GLORIOUSPOD at checkout to get 15% off of your entire purchase. And remember, a portion of every purchase at menmatterandco.com goes to men's mental health charities. Just go to checkout, put in the promo code GLORIOUSPOD, and save 15% on your entire purchase. It isn't vanity, it's self-respect, because men matter. You are listening to the Glorious Beard podcast. My guest today is Joshua Coburn. He is a purveyor of positivity on Instagram. He is a writer. He is a speaker. He is a man of many talents and trades. He, of course, has a glorious beard. So we're talking about you living where you do. And beforehand, you revealed to me that you came to a point in your life where you didn't feel as though your existence on this planet was worth it anymore. Does that go in conjunction with the reason why you moved to where you are now? Or maybe you can explain what was going on in that time in your life?
Sure. No, it doesn't. It has a connection to where I'm at today, but it's fairly distant. And to kind of fill in those gaps, essentially, when I was getting heavily tattooed and working my ass off at 18, 19 years old, I didn't realize that it would paint me in a corner. I knew that looking as I looked, as you kind of explained earlier, could paint me in a corner a bit if my hands, neck, face, etc. Tattooed, then I can't work certain places. But I liked that because it forced me to kind of follow a path of there's no other option. I don't have another solution for this. I just have to follow that dream, whatever it is. I can't fall back on you work at retail somewhere, which was perfect. But what I didn't realize the corner it would put me in was if I'm living in a fairly small town, people didn't understand. So then I was marginalized rather quickly. And you start hearing what people say. And if you hear something long enough, and at the time I didn't have the tools to push back on that internally. But if you hear something long enough, you're ugly, you're worthless, you'll never get anywhere, et cetera, you start to believe that. And I did. And I kind of came to the conclusion that, what am I doing here? I already did cool stuff. Like, I don't need to be here any longer. And ultimately I wrote a note and was kind of ready to take care of business. And then something struck me, and looking back now, decades later, I can see that what it was I told it, I wrote it, I put it out into the world instead of bottling it up so hard. I could have maybe just talked to you about the situation, but I wrote it down in this case, and I didn't know I was finding my own solution. And it also kind of hit me, like, if I put so much weight into their words and belief into that system, and it led me here, what if I just don't care about any of that? What if I only care about where I want to go? I mean, they claim to dislike me as I am. So if they're going to dislike me if I do this, well, that was the change for me. It's like, I'm not losing anything. These people already don't like me. I'm not seeking their approval. So maybe I just need to go and do as I please in the way I please. And I did. I wrote down then the very specific things that I was going to do and how I was going to do them. And I started that journey. So that's why I say, like, I'm lucky to have been the guy who, when I was young, thought, oh boy, I'd like to do these things, lost my way a little bit. And then it was like, no, I am going to do this. And I'm going to prove all these people wrong. And they're all going to come back to me and say, wow, how did you do that? And I'm going to say, I didn't listen to you. And that's weirdly been exactly what happened. And I've helped many of those people since then get their lives on track because they lost their way. And what a crazy turn of events and an honor, to say the least.
It can be difficult when we're children to see that. I grew up in a small town, much like you did. And my father was the chief of police. So you can imagine how I was treated at school.
Yeah.
I was a big kid. I was husky. I wore the husky jeans, as we called them back
Sure.
in the day. So yeah, I also got to a point in my life, much like you did, where I didn't think that my existence was valuable. And what stopped me was my best friend knocking on the door and asking me if I wanted to come over for dinner. And in that moment, because I had the means in my hand at the time. My father, again, being a police officer, you can imagine what those means were. And in that moment, I kind of realized, because it was a real tough year, it was the worst year of my childhood that year, and I just kind of realized that if I have one person, and I do have one person, and that's the thing, is we think as people that nobody cares, nobody's listening, nobody's there. But there's always one, right? And I thought to myself, if I have one person in this life who cares about me, of course I'm young, I'm stupid, I don't see the way my parents see me, my family, then that changes everything. How do you work with people who get to that point? I mean, you said you've helped people in the past. What do you do? Do you obviously you tell them your story. What is it beyond that?
Well, I guess I should mention that I don't mention much, but I'm a certified life coach, have been for, 14, 15 years. And that is built on the premise of this is where you can go. This is what you can do, right? Therapy is often, this is what happened and this is why you're here. And, I'm the guy that takes the second half of that. But by and large, it's really simple for me because I'm always like, look, to your point moments ago, if you send me a text, if you shoot me a message on Instagram, if you send me an email, I'll respond. And a lot of people, again, don't believe they have that person. And you're not going to need me forever. That doesn't mean I won't be your friend.
Right.
But it's not about anything except for showing up at first. Then we can get on track with the rest. But simply showing up, being present, being there for people, that's the thing that's easiest and that all of us can do. I think, if you're down, you don't think anybody will because your personal value is so low. It's like, they'll never respond. Well, I will. And I can give you a whole network of awesome people also. But on the other side of that, I think it's about understanding that we as people, as mentors, as individuals who've simply just been there, can show up in a way to give back and be of service to others. And that's a great way to do it. And it's simple. respond to that text, pick up the damn phone, when it rings. It's easy. So that's the short and sweet answer. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
through coaching and mentorship and other things, there's a lot of different things that I do and have done with and for people to kind of get people on the right track. And now, I'm in my mid 40s. It's crazy to look back and see these people who didn't think they were going to make it 20 years ago, thriving with a family and a business and living their life. And I get to be like this little piece of their story. And that's huge, because when I'm gone, whatever piece of me that's left in their story will live on in their kids and, whatever. And that's why I'm here. That's it. Just to do that.
Yeah, the legacy aspect of things, a lot of the times people will ask you in business, they'll say, well, what do you want your legacy to be? And most people answer from a business perspective, but I think it's the same for me as well. The people who work with me here on this podcast are the most important people in my life, not just because they're doing the work, but because we can all genuinely care for each other. And it's as simple as just sending a message saying, hey, I was thinking about you. I hope you're doing great. And it's amazing how that one little thing can change a person's day, their life. Maybe they're at that point and that message comes. I'm constantly doing that with all of my friends. It's just like, if I have time to look at Instagram, I have time to send somebody a positive message. And I think that's one of the things I love so much about what you do on Instagram, because I'm scrolling through and I'm seeing, this negative thing over here and this thing over here and this person trying to promote their product here. And then you pop up with a sign and you're like, you're going to kick ass today. And I'm like, hell yeah, I am. And I just think that's great. How did that start out for you? Like, because people use their Instagram for a lot of different reasons. And I think that yours
Right.
is one of the best, if not the best way to use it.
Thank you. It started, way back. I can't even remember when. Like, we're talking MySpace days. I've been doing this that long. And the basis for it was, going back to what we were speaking about earlier. I was trying to dig out of kind of this mental, physical turmoil that I was in. And I was like, well, I got to learn how to do this positive self-talk thing, because, when you're 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, you're just like, geez, this is the stupidest shit ever. Like, am I seriously going to try to tell myself that I'm the best and really cool? And, am I going to do that? And it's like, yeah, you gotta, or you're not going to make it. So it allowed me, writing it down allowed me to make it a part of my daily ritual, right? Become disciplined about it. It also required me to think about it, because I'm not just like saying a bunch of stuff and I can move on. I have to write this down. So that means I have to focus on it. And then posting it kept me accountable. So then I'd put it out there. And it's like, if I put out there, like, be kind to the people you see today. It's like, well, if I'm out just being a terrible person, somebody's going to call me out and be like, hey, like, I saw your note today and that's not very nice. And it's like, oh, well, I guess I need to up my level of integrity here. So it was really about keeping myself on track and keeping myself accountable and in check. And ultimately today, it's still a version of that. Like, I don't write a note necessarily like for you to see. I write it because how would I know, right? So I'm writing something that maybe I need a reminder of, or something that's come up in the past that I'm reminded of. And it's just like, okay, I need to focus on this. Or maybe it's something that's going on in the world and I have to ponder it for a minute. I'm like, man, I don't want to be that. What I want is more of this. And that's what I'm going to be today. So then I write that down and I post it. And the cool byproduct of all of this is, like you said, you see it and you're like, you know what? I am going to kick ass today, or I am going to be good today and do these things. And that's such a wonderful thing that, being a naive kid, I'm just like, I'm going to get so much crap for this, but I have to do it and I have to be accountable for it. I did not think in terms of other people are just like me all over the world and need to hear these things too, because I wasn't in a place to get that yet. And once it started happening, like, it's been a crazy ride. Like, I've been able to put books out, I've been able to speak, and it all came from putting some value in the world. And it's wonderful. And like the letters and messages that I get from soldiers, overseas and Qatar and Egypt and, you know, Iraq and Afghanistan and all this stuff, I'm just like, holy crap. Like what a crazy ripple from the small stone that I threw into the water that's reaching so many people. And now I don't take it lightly. And I even took my wife and kids were all collectively having health issues the last couple of years, and we're on the other side of that, thankfully. But I knew that I couldn't do that, and by that I mean post the cards and stuff in a way that was meaningful with the burdens I was carrying for others. And it's not that I didn't need those reminders for myself, but it was I needed to focus in another place. So it's not fair of me to show up in a way that is how do I say, I guess, less than peak for people that viewed what I was doing as peak positivity. And, I have spoken about that. And I think it's important that, we're number one, we're all fallible. Number two, there's an ebb and flow and there's seasons in life that people have to understand. And sometimes those seasons don't require me to be doing what I was doing. But that's my calling. That's why I'm here. I'm here to make people's lives better. So I'll never stray from it long. It's just sometimes there's a need for my attention elsewhere.
This episode of the Glorious Beard podcast is brought to you by Building Bridges for Brianna, a nonprofit working to prevent loss from mental health crises. Founded in memory of 15-year-old Brianna Dorgan, the organization connects individuals and families with the support and resources that they need, while also helping communities to talk more openly about mental health. To learn more or to get involved, you can visit bb4bpa.org, because nobody should have to face life alone. You are listening to the Glorious Beard podcast. My guest today is Joshua Coburn, the purveyor of positivity. He's an author, speaker, life coach, all-around good guy. This episode is sponsored by Men Matter & Co. Men Matter & Co. are a beard care company that focuses on men's mental health. And a percentage of each purchase at menmatterandco.com goes to men's mental health charities. They partner with all kinds of great mental health organizations. And right now you can go to menmatterandco.com and use the promo code GLORIOUSPOD to receive 10% at checkout. Joshua, you've talked to me before this about your father. And I should let you tell the story because the story is best told by the person who experienced it. But it was fascinating to me for someone to do what you did and the length you went to. Tell me all about it.
Well, I assume you're referring to my having to essentially search for my father's corpse, which was pretty interesting set of circumstances. So I don't think I've ever talked about this publicly, actually. So years ago, I get a call, I don't know, like 10:30 at night. It says, "Hey, Dad's missing," and the local fire and EMS and his co-workers and local police are out searching for him. This is where he's at. This is what happened. His vehicle was found upside down on a dirt road with lots of blood inside, and he's not there. And, it's like, wow, okay, so we got to find him. Obviously, he's alive and walking around because he left the scene. And it's like, okay, well, we got to go do it. So we met up at the place that, they were staging everything and basically were given a radio and told, go this way and start searching. So I'm walking through, and this is freezing cold November, mind you, in Iowa. And I was told he had only a fleece pullover, blue jeans, and like some penny loafer type shoes on. And in that kind of cold, that's pretty rough to be wearing for any length of time anyway. So I'm walking through, these barren cornfields that have been harvested. So you'd think at distance you'd see somebody standing or walking, so and I'm just walking, looking with a flashlight, wondering about like what the heck is even happening here. Looking in people's, knocking on doors, looking at people's barns and outbuildings and under vehicles and ditches and all kinds of stuff. Uh, and then, it starts getting late. It's real cold. Now it's been hours. And over the radio, they're like, now you should probably not be looking for somebody who's upright. Like it's been long enough that he's probably experiencing some sort of hypothermia. He may or may not be here any longer. So just, keep an eye out at your feet, not necessarily at eye level. So it's like, when you hear that and you're out there searching already, hoping for the best. Now hoping for the best is really just kind of got knocked down a little bit, but you're still out there to continue for him. And, you're thinking about all the things that he did for you and he didn't do for you and the discipline and the this and the that. And it's like, what am I going to find if it's me, or who's going to find him? In what state are they going to find him? And then I get a call on the radio that says that he's been found, and he was found in an abandoned truck stop miles away that he thought was headed toward town. And we were close to Interstate 80 that runs across the U.S. And he saw lights out there apparently and started going toward them thinking it was town, but being disoriented. And when he was found, he was literally frosted up to his armpits because he had went through, actually walked in circles through a creek, and that's why his cell phone no longer worked because it was underwater. And being disoriented, he would like cross a fence, go through the creek, cross another fence, walk a while, cross the fence, go back through the creek, and just was going in these large circles apparently. And then got out of that loop and went on to where he was found. He was found by a truck driver thinking that, that this place was open and was pulling in for gas and realized it wasn't open, but saw him freezing near the building. And I mean, he was so frozen that like his hair was frosted, his eyebrows were frosted, like when I saw him. And of course, he jumped in an ambulance and went on to the hospital where we caught up, hours later. But looking back at that, it's such a bizarre thing. And I don't know how much he does or doesn't remember of that, but it's one of those things like, I wouldn't call it traumatic. It was just it's one of the stories of my life, right? These are things that we go through. You were at your worst moment, and a friend kind of brought you to the fore and made you realize you have value. But was that traumatic? Those things for me, I'm always like, trauma. That's such a strange word. I don't know how that applies to me, but I'm so told that this was a very traumatic experience for most people, because you're going through something that potentially means death and loss of people you care about. But for me, it's just another thing to kind of apply, practice your mindset to try to overcome, try to get past. And I guess that probably qualifies as trauma. But for me, it was just, and it is still like such a harrowing experience. It's like, man, what a crazy thing. It's almost hard to fathom going back to as well. It's such a bizarre thing that it's like, who does that? How many people are out searching for the potential body of their parent? It's crazy.
When you look back at the experience from a distance, though, because now you have distance between that happening and the current time, what are the positive things that you can take from it? What are the positive things that you can take from those moments and apply now to your life when you look back on it?
Yeah, the resilience. There's something about all of those moments in my life that, and even my wife to this day kind of makes fun of me because she's like, you would choose to lay to sleep, at night in a pile of hay rather than take the bed. Well, why would you do that? And for me, it always comes down to the thought that, like, I know that I can do that. I know I'm capable of that. And that's how I look at moments like this as well. Like, I always choose the hard road. And I do that deliberately because I know if I take the hard road, I'm better for it. And I'll hate it and I'll probably cuss myself during the the execution of this, or the big goals. Like, I don't do little goals, I do massive goals, because that's how we grow. That's how you get there. And that's when it hurts. That's when you have to really march through pain and your feet are blistered and things really suck, but you still have to show up. And when you get to the other side of that and you look back, much like this situation, you look back at it, you start to realize, okay, if I have to stand on my own and do anything, I may not succeed, but I'll sure as hell give it a go. And I'll get as close as anybody else will. And the only reason I won't make it is because I didn't make it physically. Like, I just died on the way. And that's always been my approach. I think it's really important for people. If you really want that ice cream cone or that dessert, well, that's great. You can do that. And life is short, right? Eat the cake. But I would challenge that. Life is short. Have some discipline. Because if you're always eating that cake and then you're wallowing in self-pity because you're overweight, well, should you have eaten the cake or should you have had discipline? Because it depends on a lot of other variables. And, maybe that's me overthinking it, but that would be true to my nature.
For someone, because you and I have both been at points in our life where we were at our lowest, for someone who's also suffering the same thing, and I can speak from my own experience, going forward looks insurmountable. Going forward, becoming successful, doing that thing, achieving that goal, all of that looks like it's just so unattainable. What advice would you have for that person who might be listening right now? Like, what are the smallest of things they could do today that would change their life going forward?
You nailed it specifically. The biggest thing is, when we know that it seems insurmountable, but we want to go for it, it is about today. And it might even be about less than that. It might be about the next hour, the next 5 minutes. And, whether that's, fitness or overcoming addiction or, getting yourself mentally in a place where you feel like you can move forward. All of that comes down to, I don't need to partake in this activity, if it's drugs or whatever, and just focus on that minute and repeat and repeat and repeat until you're through an hour, through a day, through a week, a month, a year. And really focus on those little, if you want to get to the gym, if you want to get in shape, if you want to do anything, it takes taking the first step and breaking it down into the smallest step. Some people might be able to break it down into days. And again, some people might have to do it by hour, and that's okay. But make a list and start checking shit off. Because if you can physically see that and you check it off and you can see how far you've come, that pays off. And again, if in 10 minutes you realize that, oh, I did these 10 things and, I spoke to myself positively, I ate something nutritional, and all these things, you're checking those off. Well, you start winning and realizing how fast and how much you're winning. And the other piece of that I would really like to mention, that I think a lot of people don't talk about, is a lot of times it's brought up, like, find somebody you can talk to, right? That's important. I think what's even more important is not only find somebody you can talk to, but find somebody who's been there, somebody who is willing to listen and to carry you when you're not sure that you can walk yourself. Because if you have that mentor in your life, everything changes, and they're not going to know everything. And the cool thing about it is then they'll teach you what to do when you don't know. Because that was my biggest thing. It's like, well, I don't know how to do that. And now what I've learned is that's the best thing about it. I don't have to know. And I get to learn along the way, or find the people that do, and build a team of unbelievable individuals that are going to help climb that mountain. And then we get to the top and we can celebrate together. And the greatest news is when I get to the top of that mountain, I still may not know some of the things I did at the bottom, but they did. And they may not know what I knew, but together we did, and it's done. And that's the greatest feeling in the world.
Yeah, because it's easy to make yourself believe that you're the only one going through what you're going through. And you don't
Right.
realize that other people have either been there or they might be going through it too. So
Yep.
I always like to tell people, I would rather be your friend than your fixer. I'm
Yo,
not a
yeah.
fixer. I want to be a friend, and I think that
Yep.
that's an important distinction for people. You know, don't find a fixer, find a friend.
Yep. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, that friend is going to encourage you through all areas of your life, through all seasons, when you're at your best, when you're at the worst, and they're not going to leave during the worst periods. They're not going to talk crap. They're going to be the person when you're not around, building you up when you don't have any clue. And yeah, fixers are definitely not what I would suggest. So that's an awesome way to put it. I'd rather be a friend than a fixer. I like that.
So we've got just a little bit of time left, and of course, we have to talk about your amazing beard. When did you first decide you were going to start growing it, and what kind of impact do you think it's had on your life since? I mean, obviously, there's the social media aspect, there's the people who follow you, et cetera, and so on. But from a personal perspective, what's the impact been on you?
So it's interesting. I always wanted a huge beard. I always liked them. I remember, I'd see a gentleman when I worked at the grocery store I mentioned years ago. There was a gentleman that would come in that had a huge beard. I always thought, gosh, what an eccentric guy. He smoked a pipe. He was kind of a literature nerd. I so learned many of the things that I do now. And um and I thought that was cool. And then mentioning again the National Geographic stuff, I'd see tribesmen and bushmen and guys in the outback with big beards, and they were always like the shaman or the wise man, or and there's a reason, right? Wizards are always featured with beards. Um, so, so to me, there's something kind of, I don't know, magical about it, because like gnomes and here the El Duende, they always have beards. Trolls have beards. Like all these things, right? Vikings, badass, men of the past always had beards, and I love all of that. And much like the other things associated with me, it's very punk rock of me to uh, to continue doing that. Like I got into the corporate space in business because I was heavily tattooed. Now that seems completely wrong and backward, but I wanted to prove it's doable. And of course, I had a huge beard also, instead of being clean cut and suit wearing gentleman. And that's really what it's about. There's something that comes with having a sizable beard that people respect. It's like being in shape. You have to take care of it. You have to maintenance it. You have to. No one can like give it to you. Um, and you have to earn it. So I think, I mean, I like my, again, fitness, my beard, my ears are stretched rather huge, and all those things are about that. It's about the delayed gratification. It's about the long goal. You know what I mean? It's always about achieving that and the wisdom that comes from going on that journey. And that's why, again, wizards always have long beards, I think, and even depictions of dogs always have long beards. Why is that? And I don't know, but I would surmise that it has something to do with wisdom, which is part of why I love having a long beard. And I love that it's going white. Like, I think a lot of people would struggle with that. Not me. I think it's awesome.
For someone who is blind, they can't see you, they can't touch you. How would you explain your beard to them?
Oh, Jesus. That's really interesting. Uh, I mean, it is a glorious mishmash of salt and pepper goodness that flows from my chin. That's the best I got. A chin with which I don't actually have. See, my kids also make fun of me because, like, they tell me that if I would shave, I would look like Gru from that. Well, I don't know if there's a Disney or Pixar movie with those little yellow pill looking things. I don't even
Right.
know what it is. But he doesn't have a chin, and basically, I'm all neck. You know what I mean? I don't have much of a chin, so it's good I have this. Like, it's my Achilles heel. If I shave it, all my power is gone. I'm useless.
Yeah, I've had my beard now for as long as I can remember. I can't even remember what my cheeks look like anymore. So,
Yeah.
Joshua, we like to ask this question of everybody who comes on the show. When it comes to terms of masculinity, we know that there's a wrong type, there's a wrong type, there's a right type. You and I grew up in a generation where if you fell down and skinned your knee, you got up and rubbed dirt on it,
Yes.
are you done crying? Okay, move on with life, that kind of thing, which in my opinion is the wrong type.
Mhm.
Explain what you believe real masculinity is in life.
That's interesting because I think that if you're a man and you accept your masculinity, that's what masculinity is. I'm not here to create some kind of um, boundary or wall amongst men and people to define what something is or isn't. And I definitely think that there's a role for men and masculinity in this life, and we can take that back to the primal days, and there's a reason for all those things. But then again, I have many friends that are, and my son who's gay, and does that make him not masculine? Well, no, it doesn't make him not masculine. It's crazy because I can sit and talk to him, and he's much more masculine than many straight men that I know. And it's funny because it's like if I start putting a definition on things about what masculinity is, that may exclude him from that, or it may not. So I struggle a lot with labels, with anything, whether it's mental health or anything else. I always struggle with it, simply because I don't believe people fall into labels, and there's such a it's such a need amongst humans to put people in the boxes. We don't belong in those. We belong to be free and go kick ass in the way that we do. That said, there is obviously an absolute corner of masculinity and femininity, for that matter, and anything else that falls into a very wrong category. But I think most of us can identify that rather quickly because it seems to be pretty damn obvious. And I think for me, I always go back to the like mean stepdad of all the '80s movies, and like the nasty, wife beater shirt, as it were, that's got beer stains on it. And that to me is like, clearly we all know that that's the wrong type of rule by force masculinity. And again, I don't think necessarily that force and discipline and boundaries are a bad thing when it comes to masculinity, but by force is maybe part of that problem, right? So I guess that was a very long-winded question or answer to what maybe is a simple question, but it's not to me. To me, I don't like boundaries. I don't like labels. I don't like it with my music. I don't like it with my food. I don't like it with my movies, and I guess I don't like it with this. So does that answer your question? Sort of, maybe.
Well, it's your answer, so I can't give you
Right?
your
Yeah,
answer. That's the way I always put it.
I guess that's true.
Joshua, thanks so much for being on The Glorious Beard today. Where can people find you and find the things that you want them to find?
The easiest place is just Google me, Joshua Coburn, author Joshua Coburn. You can head to Instagram, which is at Joshua Coburn. And I have Facebook and all the things. So you can find me around. And again, if you're struggling, if you're out there, hit me up, send me a message. Or if you just want to say hi, drop me a line. I'm out here.
You have been listening to the Glorious Beard Podcast. My guest today was Joshua Coburn. You can find him online by searching his name, and a variety of things will pop up for him because he does a whole lot. The Glorious Beard Podcast is a production of JXB Media. You can find our website at thegloriousbeard.com. Search for us on Instagram and all the social media places at The Glorious Beard. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.